All right, we'll get started then. So thanks everyone for joining us today. This is the first New South Wales DPI Sustainability webinar, which is brought to you thanks to our Skills and Development Program. My name is Maggie Jarrett and I am a Viticulture Development Officer at the DPI. I'd just like to start off with, in the spirit of reconciliation, I acknowledge that I'm hosting this webinar from the lands of the Wiradjuri people. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you are all zooming in from today. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Australia. So in this session today, we'll be looking at improving energy efficiency to reduce carbon emissions on farms and in wineries. The focus of the webinar today is around on-farm energy pilot projects run by the Climate Group at New South Wales DPI. You'll hear from Michael Cashin, a research officer with the DPI Climate Group first. You'll then hear from Aidan Moore, the project manager, Sam Statham from Rosenay Wines, Kel Gray from the Pines Dairy, and Michael Keynes from Cora Dairy. We'll then hear from technology experts, David Hill from 720 Electrical and Justin McFarlane from Rethink Sustainability. Just a few housekeeping things before we kick it off. If you would like to provide a comment or ask a question, please click on the Q&A button that is on your Zoom toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Type in your question and click send. We will have plenty of time at the end for Q&A, so send your questions throughout, and there'll also be opportunities at the end to ask people directly questions. Also a reminder that this session will be recorded and emailed out to you. So I'd just like to first welcome Michael Cashin, who will give an overview of the on-farm energy pilot projects run by DPI. Over to you, Michael.
Yeah, well, thanks, Maggie, for the opportunity to speak today, and thanks for everyone for coming in. I think this is a really exciting space for DPI to be involved in. I think energy is an emerging issue, and yeah, this is, I guess, a presentation today, I guess, overviewing our grant program as part of a bigger suite of projects which we're underway with. The title of my talk is Helping Farmers to Take Action to Solve Energy Problems, and I'm making this presentation on behalf of a bigger team, including John O'Connor, Liz Hutton and Lynn Holmes, based in various locations. And we've got two projects, Clean Energy Solutions and the Energy Efficient Solutions projects, which have been funded under the New South Wales Climate Change Strategy, with money out of the New South Wales Climate Change Fund. There's Sam today from Rosenay, who's reflecting, I guess, on some of the energy challenges he's had in the past. You know, looking at his tractor and genset there that he's had to try to tap in historically before we had the grants program, and he's obviously implemented that grants program to try and tap into to some three-phase power to run some processing stuff for his fig and wine operation. Just a little bit about why DPI is involved with the energy space. There was a fair bit of lobbying and pressure put on government from groups like New South Wales Farmers around emerging impacts of rising energy prices on the agricultural sector. DPI responded through looking at, I guess, the opportunities in that space, and we've come up with sort of three projects out of a whole budget of 29.2 million. That sort of focus on energy, specifically in the top two, the Clean Energy Solutions and Energy Efficient Solutions are the projects which have funded this grants program. So we've got a budget of about 7.7 million, and the project will run through till about June 23. These pilots are part of that portfolio of projects. Okay, when we started the project, energy was a new sort of space for DPI to be involved in. So we thought it was prudent to, I guess, seek the advice of others that have been involved in the space previously. We commissioned the Alliance for Energy Productivity to do, I guess, a scoping report for us, looking, I guess, which sectors were the most exposed and sensitive to increases in energy costs, but also had the most opportunity to do something about that. They identified the intensive agricultural sectors that, you know, feedlots, wine, cheese, eggs, etc., as being those sectors most exposed and sensitive to those costs, because obviously they use a lot of energy and they often do a lot more value adding on farm. So we use that then, I guess, as an argument to base and focus our investment in terms of the grants program on the intensive sectors. You can access that report on our website if you're interested. In September 2019, we went to I guess, request for proposals. That was advertised to the Land and Sydney Morning Herald. And we received 21 proposals of interest across the different subsectors of the intensive areas. They were evaluated by an independent steering committee, and 11 of those proposals selected to move through to expert feasibility studies. So we had consultants undertake independent feasibility assessments of each of the ideas that the farmers came to us with. The results of the feasibility studies are on our website, and they were evaluated against merit criteria. 7 of those proposals then selected to proceed to, I guess, project or pilot projects. And at the 11th of December, the Minister announced that publicly, and we basically contributed 50% of the project funding up to 2.641 million across 7 of those project pilots areas. This is a little bit of a summary of the types of projects that we've invested in. At Avondale, which is in Rowan, north of the state, there's a feedlot, like a large cattle feedlot, basically solar with battery and genset backup. Dairy New South Wales is solar thermal chilled water storage and pre-milk cooling, and that's on 3 different sites across 3 farms in the Dairy New South Wales area. At Farrer, we've looked at electrification of irrigation pumps and raised solar PV, agrivoltaic system up there, and that's underway as well. Admirig's a sheep feedlot, so we looked at battery and solar there as well. Pecora, the Pines and Rosenay, they're similar types of systems, although varied obviously to meet the needs of each of the farms, and we're going to hear more about those each today. So DPI invested about 1.32 million. Each of the farmers had to contribute 50% of those funds to give us a total budget of 2.641. So it's a real co-investment sort of method. Spatially, we've got projects across the state, as I sort of indicated in the earlier slide. There's the clusters around a couple of locations, particularly where the dairies are, various types of dairies. And you can go to our website, that hyperlink at the bottom of the page there, and you can access more detail on each of those projects, including their feasibility assessment. So that's, if you're interested, you can certainly dig into that in a bit more detail. Overall, we sort of invested in, I guess, a range of projects, and I won't go into a lot of the detail on each of them today, just due to time, but basically we've looked at, solar PV, chilled water storage and control systems, electrification of various equipment, raised solar PV and battery storage systems in varying configurations, and peer-to-peer energy trading. There was another number of projects looking at things like biogas and other projects. We just couldn't get them to be economically feasible given the scale of operations. We're certainly interested in looking at that down the track. Skip across a few slides here. That's just, sorry, just to go back. So basically, that's a little bit of an overview of what we've done in terms of the grants program. We've got a lot of other work underway, including the H-Cuts trailer, which you can see here today. There's a picture of Michael here, one of the presenters from the day at the Renewables Conference in Dobbo, which was done earlier the year prior to COVID. But this is just another type of innovation where we're using this interest in hydrogen and obviously fuel cells in a unique way. We've got a shearing shed hairdressing salon, which we can take around the state and interact with farmers and talk about, I guess, some of the energy challenges they have. And John O'Connor's the chap to talk to about that. Happy to take any questions if you've got time, Maggie, or I'm happy to take those later. Either way.
Yeah, we'll do questions at the end. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Maggie. Stop sharing.
Thanks for that brief overview, Michael. And yeah, if anyone's got any questions, I'll also attach the link to the DPI website that's got all the feasibility studies for these projects as well to your follow-up email. So next up, we'll have Aidan Moore. So Aidan is a project manager with 15 years hands-on experience delivering over $120 million in major infrastructure projects for a New South Wales government agency. Outside of full-time work, he has a deep interest in artesian produce and sustainability and agriculture. Over to you, Aidan.
Thank you, Maggie. Can you hear me okay? Is the sound coming through okay?
Yeah, it is. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So over the next few minutes, I just want to give you an overview of myself, a bit of background on myself, the project role I undertook, and also a summary of the project at a high level, leaving the farmers to talk a bit more in detail. So to introduce myself and motivations to be involved in this exciting project, I have to go right back to the start. I grew up in a semi-rural area of southwest England called Gordano Valley. We were surrounded by just a few hundred neighbours, a couple of dairies, and lots of apple trees. At home, we had plenty of space, we had plenty of water, plenty of resources. So I used these from a young age to hand rear lambs that farmers didn't want. and obviously developed a very strong connection to agriculture through those years. We even had an area dedicated to growing our own food. We were pretty self-sustainable. So for me, that was an idyllic childhood. And naturally, my thought was I would go into agriculture following that. But unfortunately, life had some different ideas. And after I finished university in 1994, over the next 5 years, I had a couple of office jobs that didn't work out, moved cities, went walkabout for a while, and ended up changing countries and coming to live in this wonderful country we now live in. So based in Sydney, you've already heard from Maggie that I've delivered some very large infrastructure projects. The important key thing about that is that it had a rural and regional focus. And that gave me some access back to those days, my informative years, but even that wasn't enough. So I'd used to trawl the Sydney farmers markets on a monthly basis, catching up with farmers and talking to them and hearing from them about their sustainability initiatives and projects, and obviously buy their artisan produce. And I'd pick the quiet moments to go and talk to them, because that would give them an opportunity to tell me more and have a bit of time for me. And it was during those chats that I got to know the farmers you're going to hear from today. And it was one of those Saturday afternoons, and I'd heard a vision for energy independence and carbon neutrality. And for some reason, it just sparked something in me, and I got really inspired. So around that same time, as Michael Cashin has mentioned, there was a release of the energy efficient pilot program. It was almost like a number of worlds collided together for good. So I actually offered my project management skills to the farmers, and fortunately they said yes. So we went into planning phase. We pulled some ideas together, and we came up with some common energy problems that they wanted to solve. And they were effectively the social license to operate, to become carbon neutral or accredited, energy security, and that really was around a minimum of 4 hours on site available 3-phase power at any given moment. Energy independence, and that was electrification of equipment that was currently fuel powered, and that would reduce a number of things, including dependency on deliveries. And then there was a requirement to have a platform that these farms obviously saw themselves growing over time, and the requirement for energy growing over time, and there's a requirement there for a modular approach, so that if in the future, say for example, electric vehicles came along, farm vehicles, they could expand their infrastructure to power those things as well. And then the final thing was economics. Clearly, energy costs at that time were not going south, they were going north. So any opportunity to reduce the operational costs, yes, with a bit of CapEx, but that was an important thing as well. So we'd also around that time been introduced to a group that you can hear from later today in the presentation that were piloting a very novel solution around sharing energy across farm meters and business to business. And we included that as our innovative component of our submission and as a phase 2, and that's where we are right now. And Justin will talk to you about that later. So we did a market approach. 720 Electrical, that are going to talk to you shortly, they were successful in a market approach to find a designer and integrator. But we also looked really carefully at risk, because at that time we were just leaving the drought, or the drought was still evident. But the bushfires of 1920 were raging in the background. And in fact, Pecora Dairy were actually evacuated from their farm at one point during that process. So what we wanted, when we looked at risk, what we really wanted was durable, hardworking and low fire risk technologies. You know, I'm sure farmers are very cognizant. If you bring new equipment onto site, electronics, for example, there could be some risks associated with that. And each of the farmers was very keen to manage that risk. And then Michael Cashin mentioned the deed was executed around October 2020. For us, that was like magic happening. And we followed obviously that process followed a very rigorous selection process. And we were really happy to be flying the flag for the artisan smaller producers. So in terms of, then we moved into implementation. The PV and storage solution, I'll leave David to talk about the technologies, But effectively, the project delivered a total of 140 kilowatt hours of PV across the 3 farms, 160 kilowatt hours of storage. Each of these systems delivers 3-phase power, night and day. And the value of that component of the project was about just over $500,000, excluding GST. But there were other project upgrades that we included in our program, and they were completed by local traders and suppliers, which gave us a good feeling because it was supporting the local businesses. In Rosenay, they had unreliable single-phase mains power supply. That was replaced. The transformer was upgraded to something with greater capacity. The winery and the 2 accommodation buildings were physically connected with 3-phase underground cabling. So the overhead cables were removed, and that's got a number of benefits that Sam could talk to. In Pecora, they had 2 8-year-old LPG powered water heating systems. One would take the water to 60 degrees and then it would take it to 90 degrees for washdown. These were electrified, so they could be powered from the on-farm PV and storage system. And plus also, by removing the LPG reliance, those heavy delivery trucks racing around the farm on unsealed access tracks, which obviously would have a maintenance impact. And sometimes when the wet weather came and the tracks got slippery, they just simply wouldn't deliver. So that's given Pecora, a whole new level of energy independence. Finally, they upgraded some cheese making equipment and some control systems. And what that effectively does for them is it optimizes the finished volumes and weight of their cheese. Moving to the Pines, to Kalamala, they upgraded their chilling systems to support. They invested heavily in their business to expand their cheese production, including increasing capacity of maturation rooms and cool rooms. And this new chilling system was obviously supplying them with the required cooling abilities. So the total component of that component of the project was 150 grand ex GST, and in total, the project came in around 700,000 ex GST. So in terms of timeline, the Pines was the first cab off the rank. We went live. The systems were commissioned in December 2020. Pecora's next. We commissioned the systems in February and March of 2021, and then Rosenay in April was the last one to be commissioned, and that was largely to do with the upgrade to the transformer. So quality-wise, I'll let the farmers tell you about the quality of the solutions, but just a few closing comments. The project was a success from my perspective, and I think from the farmers' perspective as well, from the DPI's perspective. It certainly was a whole of team effort, and we delivered within our nominated constraints. We would like to acknowledge Michael and Jock from the DPI. They were super supportive throughout the entire process and provided great support and guidance. I'd also like to thank Maggie for the opportunity to speak today. And on a technology level, I put my money where my mouth is. I was so impressed with the technology selected that I actually paid full list price myself to have a residential sized system implemented in my house. We're effectively now off grid and have the added bonus of blackout protection. So next, we're going to run a short video to introduce Sam at Rosenay. That's being provided to us by the battery manufacturers Redflow. And following that, we'll hear from David at 720 Electrical. We hope that you get what you need from today's seminar, and we really appreciate being part of it.
I'm Sam Statham. I'm from Rosenay Wines at Canowindra in New South Wales. We're a family vineyard. We've been going for about 22 years, and we grow 50 acres or 20 hectares of vineyard. We grow olives and figs, and we've recently installed the Redflow batteries. We put the Redflow batteries in because we wanted to improve our energy security. Being able to do more of our processing on farms, such as our winemaking right through from crushing to bottling, as well as our olive processing and our fig processing. That includes all our large equipment, as well as cool rooms and refrigeration and that side of things. We were using really old single-phase supply off the grid. It was very unreliable. We'd have a fair few blackouts and things. And then for any of our heavy usage, such as like a steamer or a large pump or a crusher or a press, we had to use this old tractor, which is about 60 years old, but it was just right size for this three-phase generator that we bought. But over time, we started to realise that using the diesel tractor, apart from the maintenance cost, the diesel cost, the inconvenience, the risk of breakdowns, it's just been a huge improvement to enter the modern age with solar power combined with the Redflow batteries. And what I really like about the Redflow batteries is it was so easy and convenient, and we haven't had to use any of our shed space or anything. It's just kind of like this unit that can just be installed and ready to go. Well, working with Redflow has been really easy. There's been a lot of monitoring. I don't have time to monitor the performance all the time, but then you get a phone call from Redflow. They've noticed that something needs a bit of a tweak. It's good to have that backup and to know that someone's making sure that it works.
Well, thanks, Aidan. Geez, it's a bit weird looking at a video of myself there, but I'll give you guys a bit more of a background about us, and try not to go on for too long, and maybe just answer some questions at the end. I'm sitting in the ute out in the vineyard, but it's a bit windy out there. I'll talk for a little while, then I'll go out and show you what our vineyard looks like as well, so we can add that to the whole picture. But yeah, Aidan is just a fantastic facilitator. We were so lucky to come across him to get it all together for us small guys, because as you saw, a lot of the other projects that were funded were much bigger, where they probably have professional in-house people to do that sort of stuff. So having Aidan was just amazing. And thank Aidan. And obviously DPI, like amazing timing. We've been sitting in this sort of energy twilight zone for a long time, with sort of decision paralysis, wondering when the price of batteries is going to come down, wondering what's the best way to approach our energy usage, because we use power on multiple fronts. Like we use it for irrigation, obviously, to grow the crops, and we have a bore and a river pump, and they're both electric powered. However, they're both down in the flood zone, and there's issues with putting solar down there, easements and all sorts of other complications. So we started looking more closely at what we can do with our shed and winery and processing area. But one of the things was that back in about 22 years ago, my house was on solar, and we had old lead acid batteries and a 1 kilowatt solar array on the roof. And those batteries were terrible. Like they would get, if you ran them too low, they sulfate, whatever it's called, they build up stuff on the lead. And the new batteries, these Redflow batteries, were so attractive to me because they're basically renewable over time. They can be replenished. There's no problems of discharge and needing to replace them. So that was very attractive there. But so Rosenay is organic, and I guess from an overall sustainability point of view, we're trying to reduce our carbon emissions. We're not in any sort of monitoring or carbon neutral certification scheme. We've been certified organic for 23 years, and that's enough paperwork for me, to be honest. But certainly it's an interesting process to get to understand your energy usage with outside expertise. But I guess from the ground level, our approach to carbon has always been to try to build carbon in the soil. So we use a lot of compost. We have ground cover and a lot of clover and grasses and things that we graze with sheep. We've raised our cordon in order to be able to graze the sheep during a wider window of the year. And most recently, we've installed subsurface irrigation. So we've actually this could be a time. No, I'll get out and show you that in a minute. But yeah, we've installed subsurface irrigation where we've got just a standard 18mm, 90mm drip tube ripped up the middle of the rows, so that we don't have all that problem of weeds under our vines and wastage of water. So, and the other thing about the subsurface is it means we could, if we went ahead with the original project to electrify the bore, we could just pump when the sun's shining. So it's kind of using what you got, which is sunshine when it's hot. It's mostly sunny when the vines are mostly thirsty. So that seemed like a very obvious efficiency, is to go underground with the water. And because if you irrigate during the day and it's a hot, windy, sunny day, you get a lot of evaporation. So we've found that we've saved a lot of water and therefore energy doing that. But the plan hasn't quite happened yet, but we're getting there now. And I guess the other experts will explain it a bit more, is we'll be able to sell the power from the winery. So by putting solar and batteries on the winery and the shed area and the farm stay and cottage and all that sort of area of the farm, we'll be able to use power during vintage and all those times when it's critical to have plenty of power. But during the off season, like now, when we've got sunny days, not using that much in the winery, we can sort of sell the power to ourselves, because we've got another meter down at the bore. I've got a meter at my house, which is a separate supply. And so that means we can be using the solar that we're generating at the winery and using the carbon track device. We can instantaneously trade power at any time and just basically use our own power in different locations. So that's an interesting part of this. Perhaps the biggest frustration with that whole concept is that the network operators don't really want to do that. I think it's possibly a threat to the system to have people trading power. However, if part of the purpose of this trial is to be able to say, well, realistically, it doesn't cost that much to transmit the power 2 kilometres or 1 kilometre, and maybe we can have a more realistic cost fee structure for the privilege. Hey, Aidan, are you keeping on time? I'm not.
You're okay so far. A couple more minutes, I think.
Couple more minutes, okay. Well, I'll go out in the vineyard and just show you what we've been doing. I can't actually see the screen here, but I guess you can see. This is Rosenay Vineyard at Canowindra, and in some of the roadway areas, we've planted thousands of trees over the years. And so this is Rosenay Vineyard. So as you can see, there's no sign of any irrigation pipes and stuff. But down here you can see a flushing valve, supposedly with subsurface. Anyway, the tube is actually under the ground, up the centre of the row. And so it's about 6 inches underground. And so yeah, this is our system here, using sheep to graze the vineyard. You can see clover and pretty dense ground cover, solid ground cover underneath the vines. And over the years, we've increased our organic matter from 0.2% to about 1.5 or something. give or take. So yeah, that's basically what the place looks like, and probably the end of my presentation.
Thank you, sir. I think we're next going to go to another video to introduce Michael Keynes at Pecora. Maggie, you there? Yep. Now, we apologise in advance. This does have a draft watermark across it. This hasn't been finalised yet, but we thought the information was really important for today, so we've fast-tracked it to include it in today's presentation. Thank you.
The really exciting thing is not only are we able to generate solar energy through the PV that are on our roof, but we're also able to store it with these Redflow batteries. Most days this will drive the machinery shed and also the farmhouse, and so far it's reduced our energy bills by about 75%. The other 2/3 of our solar panels are on the dairy complex and also the shearing shed. And right over to the right hand side there, we've got a containerised battery solution. One day the power completely went out in the township of Robertson, and we were halfway through milking, and we just kept sailing right through without even knowing that the power had gone out. Some of the technology that we're really excited about are these Redflow batteries. They're all Australian technology, made from completely recyclable materials, really long.
So we're just going to move across to the Pines Kiama, another micro dairy on the eastern seaboard, and introduce you to Director Kel Gray, who's going to talk about the farm and the solution they've implemented. Thank you, Kel.
Can everyone hear me okay? Good. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for having this Zoom meeting. And also big thank you to Aidan for the project in the beginning, getting us going, and for the DPI team for helping out. So we're a dairy farm on the south coast of New South Wales in Kiama. It sits on Darwell land. Our family's been farming here since 1854. So I'm 6th generation. When I came onto the farm quite a few years ago, it was pretty evident the size of our farm was going to struggle to last long into the future, sort of as a conventional farm selling to multinational processors, so raw milk to multinational processors. So we came up with a plan to sort of produce our own products on farm and value add, and hoping that that would maintain our lifestyle here as dairy farmers. That happened in 2013, and transitioning as that transition happened, and I sort of took over the accounts, energy never seemed to be a big concern or a big bill that I had to pay each quarter. But as we started processing more and more, adding more machinery and sort of equipment onto the farm where we had to maintain products at a certain temperature, it sort of coincided also with the rising costs of energy. And at the same time, in our area, we have a terrible grid system. So when we did our feasibility study and got our reports from our energy provider, it came back with, we were averaging a blackout every 2 weeks. And that meant that on average every 2 weeks, usually these blackouts happen at some outrageous hour at night or very early in the morning. So you're out and about checking all the cool rooms and freezer rooms and hooking up generators to keep them going. Along with the blackouts, we had some data measured here to see what was going on with issues of voltage. So the grid here in this area, we're receiving volts anywhere from 218 to 258 within a short period of time. Most of our equipment these days has electronics in it, and that was doing a lot of damage to motherboards. So I think we averaged out that we were spending about $3,000 to $5,000 a year on replacing just the motherboards in equipment. So it became obvious that we needed a long-term solution. We also wanted some little independence. I think moving into the future, it's important that we sort of looking long-term. I can tell you from history on our farm, everything's been very short term. So all the decisions were made by generations in the past were basically, how do I get through this year and this year alone? And I'll worry about next year later on, which led us down the path of having a very old system, very unreliable system. And as the cost of the energy went up, our bills started to explode. So with that, along came Aidan, and he's been incredible. He put us on this journey with the DPI. So we've put in a 60 kilowatt solar system. Ours is down in the paddock, facing, we based our system northeast north. The reason being, a lot of our processing and our energy consumption is in the morning. So we wanted a little more easterly direction so we can pick up power earlier in the day rather than later. And along with the 60 kilowatts of solar system, we've got 60 kilowatts of battery. I must say it's an amazing system. It was incredible to be here and watch it being installed. It's given us a whole lot of independence. So there's very rarely a day now where we will use more power than what we will produce on farm. We capped, it was only last week, we finally went over the 400 kilowatts in one day. That was our production, which is very exciting. It was just sort of a nice little marker for ourselves to look at. We like the fact that over time now we can sort of predict our energy costs for the future. So we've budgeted almost 10 years in advance for the energy costs. Sam touched on the fact, and so did Michael, with the Redflow batteries. There's very few moving parts in them. They're very sustainable long term. So even the changeover in 10 years time, not all parts will need to be replaced, which we like that. We like thinking long term for our farm. I guess the biggest benefits for us too are still to come. So we know with our consumption, if you think of dairy farming, we start early in the morning before the sun's up, and during the middle of winter, we're sort of finishing when the sun's already down. So our energy consumption is very high in the morning, high in the afternoon, which is almost the opposite of a solar graph. So as we move forward in sort of our production and our system on farm, we're hoping to move our production schedule to match what's happening with the solar graph. So that moves in, we're going to move into seasonal milking, where once we carve the cows down in spring, we'll milk twice a day when the days are longer in summertime. And as we move into the shorter days of winter, we'll swap to once a day milking in the middle of the day when the sun's at its highest. And then in the dead part of winter, in that August and June to August, we'll obviously have a dry herd where we're not milking at all. And so the solar panels become all about maintaining the product we have. We've also tried to make our maturation rooms for our cheese as efficient as possible. So we're making a cheddar which needs to mature for over 12 months. So it's important for us that, again, it's another long-term solution. We put in a passive cooling system. So we're not using fans and cool room motors all the time. It's just cold water circulating throughout the exterior of a room. You think of it as basically working like your esky that you take to the picnic, where you're just keeping everything at the same temperature with static movement. So then it just becomes about how do we cool that water. Again, we've done that as efficiently as possible with this project and using big 3-phase motors. So that they obviously use energy, but with the 3-phase, it's much easier on the solar because you're spreading that power out over 3 phases. It's doing a very efficient job. And that's what sort of we've been looking at on our farm, is to move from generations of ad hoc decisions to hopefully long-term solutions that will be here for a long, long time. As far as the whole project. If you want to talk about things that people need to like sort of discuss and need to know if they're looking at these sort of systems, my only suggestion would be probably don't do it in the middle of a pandemic. That would be about all I could suggest for that one. It's been a little interesting doing a lot of communications and trying to get farmers to talk about wiring over a Zoom meeting. That's been one hard part of the project. But overall, I'd say it's a smashing success, and anyone thinking of going down the solar path should just do it. Yeah. Back to you, Aidan.
Thank you, Kel. So we asked Michael from the court to jump out of the Zoom session and come back in again. Hopefully he's with us now, and we can try the sound levels again.
Hopefully everybody can hear me.
Yeah, that's much better, Michael. Well done.
Believe it or not, I did nothing except the old turn off and turn back on again. Anyway, sometimes that's all you need to do, right? Look, a big thank you to the DPI, Michael Cashin and John O'Connor for their support, and also a big thanks to Aidan. I think it's fair to say that when all of us embarked on this project, I mean, one of the things when it comes to electrifying a whole farm is that sometimes just the options that are out there are a little bit mind-boggling to sort of get your head around what's the appropriate solution, who's a good installer, what products they should be using. And for quite a lot of farmers that I know, it's just too much. And so people keep procrastinating from getting on with electrifying their farms and using solar panels and batteries. And all I can say is that if you're as confused as we were 12 months ago, you really should try and reach out to Aidan. And he is such a great project manager and translator of technologies, and he did just a magnificent job for Sam and Kel and I. What started us on this project was a couple of things. From a pragmatic point of view, I should just quickly say a little bit about us. So Pecora Dairy, we're in Robertson, in the same council LGA as Kel. We're in the Kiama LGA, but we're on top of a mountain. So we're inland and we're about 700 meters altitude. We're a little bit different in that we milk sheep and we turn all of that into cheese and yogurt. We were the first cheese maker in the country to be licensed to make a raw milk cheese, a raw milk non-cooked cheese. So we sort of believe that our products are positioned to be, benchmark Australian cheeses, but also we consider ourselves to be quite innovative. So if I can talk about where our headspace was at 12 months ago, if we wanted to achieve a couple of things. Firstly were the pragmatic frustrations around what was happening on the farm. So very similarly to what Sam and Kel have already described, we were in a position where we had a big LPG hot water system, which was the principal creator of hot water for the farm. We were going through one of those 45 kilo bottles of gas every single week. So they cost about $120, I think, 120, 130 bucks. So we were going through about $600 worth of LPG every month. The problem, as Aidan described before, was that the LPG trucks were unreliable. Sometimes they'd refuse to come onto the farm when it was raining, and it created difficulties. We were burning fossil fuels. It was unreliable and it was expensive. What's more is that we were frustrated not just with the practicalities of it, but we were also frustrated with the way that the whole system operated. So again, very similarly to what Kel and Sam have mentioned, we experienced regular blackouts throughout the year. The normal scenario that would occur if we got a blackout was that we would get onto Endeavour Energy. We would try and find out as best we could how long the blackout would be. And sometimes they'd say it was 24 hours or 6 hours, or they didn't know. So we then have to make a call as to whether we went out and hired a generator or not. I think one of the last times we had to do this, Endeavour Energy told us our power would be out for 2 or 3 days. So I thought, well, I better go out and get a generator. I went all the way down the hill, paid $250 to hire a 20 kVA generator, brought it all the way back to the farm, plugged it in, and just as I plugged it in, the power came back on. So these are the sorts of frustrations that brought all of this to a head, where we decided the solution for energy security and for economics and for efficiencies was to take control of our own energy production. What's more, we absolutely know that part of our brand is to address the social license issues, to look after the environment on our farm, the flora and the fauna, the soil, but also make a contribution to the world climate. And when we produce our own brand of goods, we find that customers are ever more so demanding that our brand is a good corporate citizen, that we're producing in a manner that is not that is respectful to animal ethics and to the environment and to producing some social value. So all of that's very important to us as well, because if we can advance your green credentials, it makes us a more stronger, more resilient business. If we fast forward today, and I'm just wrapping up here, if we fast forward today, our energy bills are 25% of what they would have been otherwise. We sail through blackouts. I think, and I know that in the last 6 months, we've produced more energy on our farm than we've consumed. So we're a net producer of electricity, and our farm is much more efficient, much more reliable, and we're saving a lot of money. I seriously recommend anybody that's still sitting on the fence and thinking about all of this to just get on with it. You'll never regret it.
That's terrific. Really appreciate that. And I think we're going to move to David from 720 Electrical now to do a bit on the technologies. David, you there?
Yes, thanks, Aidan. Can you hear me?
Hear you perfectly. Thank you, David.
All right, I'll just share screen. Let me know when you can see that.
All good, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you, Aidan, and thank you to the farmers. It was a great experience for us to be involved with such great projects and with the DPI. Yeah, just magnificent that we could be involved. And hearing what the farmers have got out of the systems already is great news. And yeah, hoping it sort of gives a confidence for other farmers to go down the same path. But anyway, I thought I'd give a bit of a quick slide of sort of roughly how the systems work, and a few photos of the systems that we did, and give you an idea of what the guys have been talking about. So yeah, a little bit about us. We have 25 full-time staff. We pretty much work in most states other than Northern Territory. We do also work in the construction industry. We do a lot of retail for the Coles and Woolworths and do industrial, but yeah, obviously we're pretty massive in the renewable energy sector. We're also distributors for Redflow and Victron Energy, who are coupled together with the Redflow Batteries for the battery inverters. And that's how we got involved with the project. As the guys have discussed Redflow Batteries, and that's the path they wanted to go down, and that's when we got involved. Yeah, in the past couple of years, it's the market's really grown, and we're definitely on board to grow out that side of our business a lot more. So here's a pretty simple layout of the systems. Obviously, they ranged in size, but this is kind of what they look like with a simple design. So on the left there, you've got your grid. On the right, you've got your farm and all your loads. The Victron inverter in the middle, that is the battery charger. That's basically the brains of the system. That dictates where the solar is going, what it's charging, if it's going to load or it's going out to the grid. And that's yeah, and that's what you can see. The farmers can actually get into the Victron inverter off their phones, their laptops, and see what the systems are doing. This down on the bottom there is a DC to DC solar charger. So that's a bit more efficient because it charges the batteries directly. And then you've got two Fronius inverters on the left and right of the inverter charger. And then at the bottom, the Redflow storage systems. So the reason we have those two inverters split is we've got one AC inverter on the grid side. This will only operate if the grid's operating. If the grid drops out, that will also drop out. On the right is the AC connected solar that operates at all times because that's on the battery side. So as long as there's power in the batteries, that will stay operational. The reason we have to do this is, say if you've only got a 5 kilowatt battery inverter, you can only have 5 kilowatts of AC inverting power on the battery side. So if you want to keep all your solar, so I think on Rosenay and Pecora, we had basically 35 kilowatts on each. So we've got 15 kilowatts that will always run even in a grid outage, and the rest does drop off. The way you can fix that is if you increase the size of the inverters. The DC coupled solar at the bottom also works well as a jump starter. So if we've lost grid for a few days and the farmers flatten their batteries, as soon as we get sun, that will actually jumpstart the system again and get everything back online. And as discussed, it's also a bit more efficient. So Victron have actually just brought out more DC to DC chargers and larger ones. So we're actually now in the last 6 months being able to design a lot more systems, more DC solar. And for a lot of the systems we do makes sense. So we also call this, so it is grid connected with full backup, this system. So also called a hybrid system. So this was, obviously you've seen some photos of the Pecora Dairy, 35 kilowatts of solar, mostly on the north roof and then some on an easterly roof. We try and use some easterly roof when we can, when we're using batteries, to get some charge into the batteries in the morning after they've been depleted overnight. As you can see in the very right-hand side, you can just see the power cube with a couple more solar panels that were DC charging the batteries. And also you saw the video with the machinery shed. As you can see, you might be asking why there's 3 blue Victron inverters. That's 1 per phase. So that allows us to use the batteries over all 3 phases. All right, on to the Pines. So this was, as Cal said, a 60 kilowatt hour battery system. We'd put this in a 20-foot container because Cal wanted some future expansion. So we've actually got room there for 2 more batteries side by side. We could actually stack more on top if we need to in the future. And on the photo on the right, you can see the Victron inverters and all the Fronius AC inverters, the ground mount system. And that is the ground mount system at the Pines. This was a bit of a challenge with the terrain, but as Cal said, we did tilt this slightly to the east, but mainly facing north. just to try and pick up a bit more sunlight in the mornings with his milking. This was a great project. We've got a couple of local tradesmen to help with the set out and the concreting of all the pylon posts. And then we come up and installed all the framework and solar panels. This had a underground mains run of roughly 180 metres back up to where the container was and the dairy. So quite an impressive project. And as Cal said, 400 kilowatt hours in a day, it's production. And Justin will fill you in on how we're going to trade the electricity, which is great, because at times when Cal's not using the middle of the day, he's exporting a lot. I think we've seen up to 40, 45 kilowatts at any one time. So that will that'll actually bring Cal more savings. And last but not least, Rosenay Wines. So this is what the 10-foot container looked like that we did at Pecora and Rosenay with 4 batteries, 40 kilowatt hours. The capabilities to put another 4 on top. And as you can see, we've got all the battery inverters in there and the Fronius solar inverters. This system ended up being quite good with all the restrictions, even throughout last year when we're doing these projects. It allowed us to build these all inside a factory and then ship them up. And all we required from the farmers was to give us a flat bit of space instead of having to build sheds or make room in existing sheds. So that's why the containerized solutions were quite useful for these farmers, and we've now continued to do this for other farmers on other projects. And then just an aerial shot of Sam's sheds. So again, we've done north and east, and the system down the very bottom is actually an existing system that it's only producing, I think last time when we checked when we first went up there, it was about 2 kilowatts, but we decided we might as well keep it, and that just adds into the system. So just quickly on a bit of the Redflow batteries. I won't go through every point, but just see some of the benefits of Redflow. And this is why the team, Aidan Moore and the team, looked at Redflow, as been discussed. A lot more sustainable than normal batteries, and no issues of thermal runaway, which is an issue with lithium batteries. And we are able to have 100% capacity at the end of its 10-year warranty. So this allows us as a designer to not have to worry about degradation of the battery. As you can see, the lithium battery, you might have to say, well, at the 10 years, I've got to allow that we're going to lose 30%. We don't have to do that Redflow battery. And now Redflow, as you can see here, we're not even saying it's end of life after 10 years, but even after that 10-year warranty, if we need to look at upgrading the batteries, we can actually keep them in place and upgrade them on site. And that's what we've been working with Redflow, and they've come to the party now looking at what cost they'll be. And as you can see there, it's no more than 50% of the cost of a new battery. So you might be able to, at 10 years, just pay another 50% of what you pay for the battery and get a brand new battery, and off it goes again. But yeah, so that's the reason we went with Redflow, and it's quite a great technology and an Australian-based company. They've been great to work with and partner with. And just to finish, this is I just thought I'd do a bit of a sales pitch on their new batteries. This is the Gen 3. This is hopefully going to be out market next year. Obviously, with the pandemic, it was meant to be out this year, but it's slowed down production, and they've had so many orders. We've just had to keep going with the Gen 2.5, but same 10 kilowatt hour battery. It's just going to be a bit easier to manufacture, and it is slightly smaller physically. But as you can see, these are the new IBH cases that can be stacked on top of each other as well, which is a new feature which we are now installing. We have a few of these in our factory at the moment, about to go out to site. But yeah, that's a bit of a rundown from us. Thanks again for the farmers for letting us be a part of this, and Aidan. It was great, and we're just loving how the systems are working and the production that the solar is giving these farmers. And yeah, we've been on the phone to the farmers a few times and making sure they're still running while they've got no grid. So it's been great. Thank you.
That's great information. Justin McFarlane, from Executive Director from Circle Energy and Rethink Sustainability. Are you there somewhere, Justin?
I am. Thanks, Aidan. Thanks for having me.
Give you an opportunity to talk about the energy sharing capability.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me today, guys. I've got Tim Bain here from Rethink as well. Rethink Sustainability is a sustainability advisory practice. We have about 36 different touch points around sustainability that we specialise in outcome-oriented process change. One of those areas is energy, and that's where I spend a lot of my time in our business. And we've developed the ability to share excess energy that might be developed by, for example, the solar generators that the guys have been sharing with us today, and or dispatchable stored energy that might be available from batteries beyond the meter. So we can actually start to provide a benefit for that excess energy to be utilised rather than it just going into the grid for a feed-in tariff. I'll just quickly take you through some quick profiles of the virtual energy network and give you a bit of a look at what this is and how it works. So this is all live streaming data from the internet, and I'll use a few sites just to give you a few different examples of different customers and cases, case studies of how this is being used, and some good news at last for Kel and Michael and Sam. We will be able to start running your trials, I hope, within the next 2 weeks. So very excited to get that underway. Everywhere we've got one of these blue upside teardrop symbols is an energy using site, or a NIMI. So that's where someone's paying an electricity bill. So obviously everyone's using power. Some of these participants are generating energy. The beauty of what we've set up with the virtual energy network is that we're able to pick up existing legacy assets that might be out in the marketplace, as well as include new installations like the great work that David and the his 720 team are delivering around the country. But we can also pick up things that might be in place for 20, or may have been in place for 20 years, and help optimise how they're operating. From an energy production perspective, we're completely agnostic as to what that generation source is. So obviously there's a lot of solar. We've got some customers with pumped hydro. We've got some customers with wind. We've got participants that are able to actually optimise dispatchable storage like batteries or diesel generators that might be on farm or at the facility for standby power. We can actually help trade those in the market where there are what we call vol events, or frequency and grid stabilisation events, either per individual customer or per batches of customers or participants in different areas. The idea of the virtual energy network, and I'll just jump across and we'll have a look at some work we've been doing with a council. This is Hobsons Bay City Council in Melbourne, but it could be anywhere in Australia. It could be a group of farms. The Hobsons Bay City Council are making about a $10 million investment in solar across 48 different properties across their precinct. And these are some of those. And what we're actually doing is we're live tracking the data or the production of energy at these sites. And this will come up here. I'll just give you a look. This is a kindergarten in Summers Parade in Altona. And what we're seeing here is the profile of this site since midnight this morning. So the red line is energy that's being utilised from the grid. The yellow line is solar that's being produced. In this instance, I think it's a 30 kilowatt solar generator, or 27 kilowatt solar generator on the roof of a kindergarten. The dark blue line is solar being used behind the meter, and the green line is solar that's been exported. So when we look at that in a graphical context for so far today, they've only used 7.6 kilowatt hours so far today. Obviously, in Melbourne, lockdown central, kindergarten's not being utilised. They've generated 38 kilowatt hours from their solar. It's not very sunny down here today either, so it's not a great example of a day, but we can see what they've used from the grid being about a third of the energy that's being utilised. 2/3 of the energy that's being utilised has been from their own solar. And what's important for us is what they're doing with this excess, or the energy that's been exported. Conventionally, that goes back into the grid through your retailer, and you may get a feed-in tariff in some states of usually not a really attractive amount. And for larger customers that we've been working with, or we've really set this up with, where they've got multi-megawatt type size systems or hundreds of kilowatts. They often don't get a feed-in tariff where there's not a legislated feed-in tariff for the larger generators. So what we're able to do is allow a generator and an off-taker or a number of off-takers or groups of off-takers to actually agree to a price to take that excess energy or dispatchable stored energy when it's available between themselves. So in this example, the kindergarten it's obviously a council asset. There are another 47 council assets as part of this group. That excess energy can be shared off to either individual targeted off-takers or to the pool, if you like, at a price that the generator and the off-taker agree. Now, if this was a farmer and the generation site was on on the dairy shed, for example, but there was a water bore pump and maybe a remote electric fence device that had its own NIMI somewhere out in the back of a paddock, we're actually able to share that energy amongst a common owner of those NIMIs at 0 cents per kilowatt hour. So in most of our billing profiles, the energy bill is made up in really rough terms of around 50 to 55% for the kilowatt hour usage component and 45 to 50% commonly for the supply and distribution costs. This obviously varies in different markets, but if we use that as a rough rule, the excess energy that might be being generated at site A can be utilised at another site. And if that's going to one of the farm's additional meters on their property at 0 cents per kilowatt hour, that means they'll be getting a 50% saving on their bill at the secondary site. So the other thing that we can do is actually sell this to your next door neighbour or to the local hospital or whoever you like, and you can set a price to do that. And the best way to give you an example of that is to have a look at what we're doing with the Port of Brisbane. The Port of Brisbane has 24 different assets that we've just finished a 3-month trial on running to prove the concept out with a retailer that will be shortly taking this to market as a commercial product with us. So this is the Brisbane International Cruise Terminal where they've got a 790 kilowatt solar generator. Obviously, there's not a lot of cruising happening in the Australian market at the moment, so there's a lot of excess energy coming off. So what we're looking at here, the yellow line is energy that's being used behind the meter, and the green line is solar or energy that's been exported from the site. The residual trades here are the retail contract trades that are happening for this particular site. So we can see the energy they're buying from the grid, and we can see the energy that's been exported back to the grid. There's excess export energy here because there's only 24 sites live at the moment. As we have more offtake sites come into the system, more of that energy will be used through the virtual energy network that we're looking at now. So we can now see that there's some energy that's coming in from some other solar producing assets amongst these 24 sites, and we can see the energy that's been exported out to other sites within the virtual energy network. I'll just have a quick look randomly at a random day to give you a look at a 24-hour perspective for this. Hopefully that'll open up pretty quick. Just gets a bit clunky in some of these meetings. So now what we're looking at is we can see again the energy that's associated with the retail contract. And normally there would be green, or there's a couple of days there, a couple of hour periods there where there's a little bit of energy going back out to the grid. For a 0 feed-in tariff in this instance. And we can see the energy that's being moved around through the virtual energy network. If I go and have a look at it, so that's a predominant generating site. We'll go and have a look at an off-taking site, and this will give you a really good understanding of what the financial benefits of the virtual energy network are. So here we can see again the profile for 30 days of the main office at the Port of Brisbane. It's an 8-storey office building that they have. Here we can see their retail contract energy that's coming through the retailer. And here we can see the virtual energy network contribution each day. Again, I'll just go and randomly have a look at a day. And this is where this becomes really obvious. This is the energy that's coming in through their retail contract. This is the energy that's coming across from another site at no cost to them. So they're taking out a huge chunk of their peak energy use, they're taking out and providing this energy at 0 cents per kilowatt hour to this facility. We monitor through software and hardware all of this data on a half-hourly basis. So I can go in and you can have a look here at what the energy profile looks like for the site. So we can see here 5-minute trades, which AEMO require us to track this in 5-minute settlements. So we can see 5-minute trades for the retail energy contract bundled up to half-hour blocks. And as the sun comes up, we'll start to see that the residual trades here are through their retail contract. And I haven't picked a very good day, have I? Sorry, I'll just pick a different date. Let's go back a bit further. We'll see the virtual energy network trades kicking in when the sun comes up. So we can see here nominated trades are coming in now at 0 cents per kilowatt hour because it's coming from the owner of the solar generator at another one of their meters being provided across, in this case, to the international cruise terminal, from the international cruise terminal to their main office. So these nominated trades are coming in throughout the day at 0 cents. And at the end of the month, we simply have an additional line item on the retail bill from the retailer that is a virtual energy network line that will have a debit or a credit on the line based on whether or not you have used energy from the grid or energy from your own solar generator at a third-party site. I'll just show you an example of where Port of Brisbane is actually selling some of their excess energy to one of their tenants, just so you can see what that looks like as well. So here again, we can see the retail contract and we can see the virtual energy network being applied. If I click on one of these days where some virtual energy network energies come in during the middle of the day, that's now come in at a price that's 10% less than the retail contract value. So the tenant's happy, they're saving a little bit of money getting energy from the Port of Brisbane's energy system, but they're not paying the full retail rate for that energy. Port of Brisbane are happy because they're monetising their solar asset by selling that energy to someone else in the system who's not themselves. And again, we're tracking all that on a 5-minute basis, aggregated into half-hour blocks, and at the end of the month, allocating the aggregate of all of these additional costs to the tenant on their bill, and Port of Brisbane will get a credit on their bill of that aggregated total at the end of the month or end of the quarter if it's in a mass market or SME participant. I'm sure that will raise a number of questions, but I hope that's a quick overview of the virtual energy network. The applications are quite diverse. We can take excess energy, obviously give it to ourselves at another meter we're paying power costs at, or we can provide it to staff or other members in the community, or whatever we'd like to do. And I think, as Sam was saying, where they've got seasonal energy use, it means we can now open up or expand the optionality around what can be done with that excess energy where that seasonal use is not required on farm, whether that's providing that energy to the next door neighbour, another farm in a consortia of participants that are working together to optimise their energy use, or even to provide it to staff at a rate that might be a little bit better than what they're paying on their normal retail rate. I hope that's helpful, Aidan.
Justin, that's amazing. That's a 45-minute presentation condensed into 15 minutes. Thank you. No, that's great. And I'll hand you back to Maggie. I think we're going to go to Q&A, Maggie, aren't we?
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. That was really, really interesting. I definitely look forward to seeing some of the results, Justin, from that peer-to-peer stuff at the 3 farms. So I will start off with some questions. Just for anyone on the call at the moment, if you want to ask something directly, just put your, if you scroll down the bottom, you can raise hand and then I can unmute you so you can ask questions. Otherwise, put them into the chat box. Now, we've got one question in. I know you already answered it, David, but just in case anyone hasn't seen it, we want to hear a bit of a discussion around some of the advantages or the differences between lithium batteries and flow batteries.
Yeah, so just the difference. Look, they've both got their pros and cons. I suppose the Redflow battery to initial install probably is a little bit more expensive. but overall is more valuable over time. But the lithium batteries are very good with power density. So if you don't have a lot of room, they take up less room for the same size of kilowatts, and they can handle peaks and spikes a lot better. So sometimes, yeah, we do systems that lithium is the way to go. So it's not always just cut and dry, but yeah, it is definitely depending on the site.
Great, thank you. Have we got anyone else that wants to ask a question? It may be around some specific things around your business setup or whatever you want to ask. Have I got one hand up? Oh, Michael.
Myself. Yeah, this is a question to the farms. I'm interested, and I think I've got an idea of what you're going to say, but I'm just interested. Do you think you're going to, given your efforts with this project and to reduce your carbon emissions, can you garner, I guess, further financial reward from your customers based on these, I guess, improved credentials?
Can you hear me, Michael? Yeah. I guess there's always the potential for going for carbon neutral certification and putting the logo on the product. And we're currently, I think we've got another Zoom meeting next week with Pangonan, which does the carbon neutral for Ross Hill and a few other wineries in the local area, I think. So that'll be interesting. But depends on the cost of it, really, as to whether it's going to be worth it. I mean, even with organic certification, sometimes you wonder, is it worth the cost in order to demonstrate something to the consumer? But as part of the big picture, which is basically the story that we have, you know, the way we grow our product story. So it's a part of that story, and whether you're certified or not, I think people can see what you're doing, and you tell your story and trading or just I mean, not trading, getting certified or just doing it anyway.
Michael, it's a really interesting question, but if I can just answer it in a slightly different way, I think if you've got a premium brand in the marketplace, then you need to be addressing these issues. Customers these days, if they're going to pay a little bit more for your brand rather than your competitors, then they're going to do that because they have a belief in your product, and they've got a certain amount of loyalty and understanding of what your brand stands for. And I'm 100% convinced that, especially if you're producing food and you've got a premium product, you need to be able to demonstrate that you're applying A-grade animal ethics, that you're looking after your soil, that you've got some sympathy for a contribution to the world climate, to the world environment. You know, and more and more so, they're expecting brands like ours to deliver back some social good, to get out and help other people and to contribute to their community. And it's all a part of it. You can't just produce great food and expect to charge a premium. It's everything else that your brand hangs off, and it's something that I think more and more producers understand that they've got to be cognizant if they want to maintain their place in that premium place in their markets.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with both Sam and Michael on both their points there, and just add that so our panels are in the paddock on a hill above the township of Kiama, so it's very visible. And I don't think there's been a farmer's market in the last 6 months where we haven't had customers come up and and ask about why we put them in and how they're working and where they can basically get the information to do it as well. So it's a great conversation starter for us. It's been wonderful for our business.
Thanks, everyone. That's great.
So here's another question, and it might be a bit hard for you guys to answer, but if you are a farmer, where can you start when you're looking at going into renewables so that you can actually get information that isn't necessarily self-interested?
Aidan.
Well, yeah, you just got to contact Aidan. I mean, the fact is that, you know, when you're trying to build a home, you might go and find an architect that then goes and sources the right materials and everything that is appropriate for the structure that you want to build. Or, you know, you might do that. There might be many different circumstances where you actually use someone in the middle that helps you project manage and translate and get the best outcome. And it's just worth picking up the phone and talking to someone like Aidan so that they can step you through the process and make sure that you get the best system design, and that you know that you're going to get a number of quotes from reputable providers. I wouldn't even attempt to try and get your head around and design everything and just jump straight to an installer straight away. I mean, you might get lucky and find someone like 720 Electrical and just go in that way. But personally, I recommend asking someone like Aidan to help you. I mean, you've got to. If you're running a farm, you've got enough to worry about. You've got enough paperwork. You've got enough things that are occupying your cognitive space. Just get someone else to help you through the process like Aidan. That's my advice.
Yeah, great. Just jumping over to the peer-to-peer stuff, what are the costs to be in a peer-to-peer setup? Who's small or big can it be based on, i.e. can it be around 5 kilowatt households?
Yeah, we've set the van up. We looked at a lot of different ways of how we put a price for participants to join in the van, and we didn't want to be just another rent seeker on the electricity system, and we didn't want to be another gouging type approach that we're all used to with the conventional retail setup. So we've just set a fee of $5 per month for anyone any NIMI that's participating. Up to 20 megawatt hours per year. There's a scale that goes up beyond that. At the top end, with our users like Visi and Port of Brisbane with their really large energy usage sites, it's about $120 a month for them to participate. But they're at the scale they're at, they're using like $3 million to $7 million a year of electricity. So it's a very different scale to a household at $60 a year. That's attractive enough for people to be able to do this when they go away for the long weekend, to let their kids or the next door neighbour use their solar energy or their battery when they're not at home, and move it around, or to do this type of work, moving it around a property where you've got multiple NIMIs on a property.
Great, thank you. And this might actually be one for Jock. We've got a question. Looking at the future of hydrogen for tractors or even large trucks, where does this fit into a zero carbon input farm?
I have to unmute myself and turn myself on. Look, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because if you can move power around to where, at a fair price, to where you can actually make hydrogen in a regional sort of hub model that I sort of think we're going to end up with, then this sort of does help facilitate that whole thing. You need to get a lot of cheap power to make hydrogen fly, and realistically, you don't want to be transporting it too far, so you want it in a regional hub setup. So this seems to be one of the building blocks to get you there, if you know what I mean. But a definitive answer, well, I'm not going to get any further than that, but it does look, you know, this sort of stuff can be damn useful in getting us to where we've got to get to, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So I guess we'll wrap up here because we are hitting the 1:30 mark now. I will send out all the contact details for everyone who is a panelist on this, because I know there's definitely some people who are going to be interested in contacting you all. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us all today. You will also receive a survey in the follow-up email. This is probably more for the viticulture people on this call. If you want to fill that in, it'll give us an idea of what future webinars we should hold around sustainability. Thank you so much for all the speakers joining us today. It's been very, very interesting, and I look forward to seeing what the future has in hold with renewables, especially in the viticulture setting. Just finally, a reminder to everyone on here from the viticulture industry, one of the most important things I think when we are looking at going to renewables is actually collecting your data on how much energy you're using. A great program to do that is the Sustainable Wine Growing Australia program. This will benchmark your emissions based on fuel use, electricity use, and your fertilizer use. So you can actually get a bit of a picture of what areas you should be focusing on as well today. You'll get a recording of this as well. Thank you everyone for coming in and listening, and thank you to all the hosts. It's been fantastic. I'll see you all another time.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Maggie.
you, everybody.